Okay, so this is the week of the Judgment or the Aeon. And so this is an excellent week for learning how to, or practicing our magical projection. And in particular, sigil magic. So this is the projection of desire onto the world, which
Bluetooth canceled.
effectively like a collective, highly dense dream. And the magician is seeking to learn how to shape the dream, particularly in terms of how the dream becomes, how the dream unfolds, and the synchronicities. And the way we do that is through intention without lust of result. And this is an acquired skill, because magic is ultimately play. If you're deadly serious about it, it tends to backfire. In order to communicate effectively with the dream that is reality, we have to emit our intentions or desires. Not just think them, not just project them, but emit an uninterrupted pulse, if you will, that is totally and consistently and congruently in line with what we truly desire. Now, this is going to also involve our entire ecology of energy, and in fact, the ecology of the energy of the other people and the other systems around us. So, which is why getting in tune with nature and with reality and with the big picture amplifies the magician's capacity to shape the dream. Now, a curious thing happens when we think things. The bicameral mind has a habit of projecting a desire and an anti-desire at the same time. So what it does is it neutralizes, when we think something, it neutralizes that desire. When we say something like, I want X, and we think it like that, we're actually projecting both the desire and the anti-desire at the same time, and we're neutralizing the effect. So all it ends up being is strain. So there's ways around that, and one of the key ways around that is sigils. Sigils bypass the bicameral mind and allow a desire to be purely emitted into the world. It's kind of an active programming. Now, the more connected we are, the more our desires are going to ultimately reflect our wholeness. So when we do sigils, I would suggest that we tap into the connected or integrated self. Even if you don't feel totally integrated, draw on the idea of, or your notion of what it might feel like to be integrated, perhaps a future self that is integrated. And the reason I say this is because you start firing off sigils from a fragmented state, you will increase the fragmentation. That being said, everybody learns somehow, so do as thou wilt. But my advice is when affecting change, it's almost best to be as light-hearted about it as possible, which is why magic, I would say, is a form of play. A form of play. And so we can act without lust of result. As the lust of result begins to descend, the dreams become less enjoyable. So connect to the most integrated part of yourself you can find, and choose desires, choose wills, choose intentions that ultimately are congruent with that. And so the exercise that I'm going to ask you guys to do is what I'm calling a sigil forest. Now, you all probably built a sigil before. We did it in one of the previous classes. Just to break down what the basic technique is, this is a chaos magic style sigil as developed by Austin Spare. And you write a sentence such as, for example, you want a new job. Do you write, I want a new job? Well, no. Because if you write, I want a new job, the result you will get is exactly the statement. You will get the statement, you will get the wanting of a new job. Since you already want a new job, then the sigil is successful and finished. But there's no new job that occurs. There's just, yeah, okay, great. You've got so you choose the desired, so I have a new job. I have a new job in a travel agency. I have a new job at the university. I have a new job at the bar on Wellington and First. Get specific and then put it into a present tense statement. Okay. Now, once you've done that, you write it out. And you write it out, and once you've done that, I'm trying to give you an example. I'm not going to actually show you any of the sigils that I've done or tell you what the desires are because it's counterproductive. Don't really tell people. You can show them the sigil once the meaning has been obscured, but the idea is you actually don't want to remember the meaning of the sigil. It's a lot easier to forget them than you think, especially if you make lots of sigils, which we're going to do. So you'd write out a sentence. Let's see, grab this pen here. So you write out a sentence. It's not a working pen. So I have a new job. I have a new job. Could be better phrased than that, but make it specific, and don't be afraid to dream big. Seriously, if you really think that that something's impossible, I think you can still cast a sigil for it. The key is you've got to make sure that you want it, it's congruent, that there is ultimately a way for it to manifest. So you will act congruently with the desire, right? You say, I want a new job, and then immediately get a fucking skull tattooed on your face. Unless you want a job that involves, that would work with a skull tattooed on your face. Maybe, but in that case, be very specific. I want the job as the skull-faced man or woman. But you see my point. Don't run counter to the intentions, because you want it to be like an energy. So I have a new job. Next thing I'm going to do, and I don't always do this, but I'm doing it in this case, is I look and I rewrite the sentence, but I exclude all of the letters that are repeating. So I exclude all repeating letters. I just get all the letters that are all the singular letters. And then, of course, I make a sigil out of the letters. And the sigil is kind of a confluence or a conjunction of all the letters. Now, if you've seen me work, I take a sigil like this and then I do it again and again and again. And eventually I'm going to erase all the previous material. So I will burn this and I will make one of these, and then I'll make another and another and another. And I'll be happy to make a little mistake or an embellishment or whatever I feel like, because I'm actually trying to get farther and further and further away from the initial form. And until I have something, and let me give you just an example of what one of my finished sigils would look like. One of my finished sigils would look like this, which has been very highly stylized and passed through several phases. Okay, so good. So this is your basic sigil. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to suggest a small sigil forest. So I made this massive sigil forest. It took me a year to do this. So I I'm going to walk you through the process of how I ultimately made this and what I might use a sigil forest for. But today is a pretty good, today is or this whole week is a very good day, very good week to be doing this kind of thing. Because the Judgment card, of course, is polar opposite to the Magician. It's a very excellent leverage point in the process to get your intentions written down and out there. And so I've written 40 of them. You do not have to write 40 of them. You can write 5 or 4. And they're, as I say, stated in the present tense. Sometimes I say the same thing basically in 3 or 4 different ways. I am a great skier. I am fantastic at moguls. I, look good in spandex. All that kind of stuff. Those are not my actual sigils. But they basically say the same thing. That's okay. Redundancy is fine, right? Because it's layering momenta, right? Okay, so I've got a whole list of these sentences I've written down. This is the first stage, and tonight I'm going to burn these. So the second stage is I took, and this I built over the last, whenever I get a thought, I'll put it down, and then I'll build up a kind of a surplus of these sentences, and then I'll get around eventually to sigilizing them, which is what I'm doing now. And so what I'll do is I got the 44, and I wrote them all out on card, just the sentence and then a blank spot beneath them. So I got the sentence at the top and a blank spot beneath them, and that's where I put the letters. That's where I put the second form, which has all the double letters cut out of it. So and I did that. I didn't do that with all of them, but I put all of them into this sack. I have a big sack of sentences. And so now what I do is and you can do this all in one sitting, or you can do this over a period of time. It's a process of distillation. So what I did is I drew 4, and I maybe 5, and I put 1 back because it wasn't part of the cluster. So I kind of grew like a cluster. In permaculture, they talk about guilds of plants. So it made sense. I looked at them. They're like, okay, these all kind of work together. And so then I went and I wrote the sentence with the doubled off, or with the canceled out doubles underneath. And so I have 4 of those sentences. Okay. At that point, I made 4 sigils. And now these go into the burn pile, and these go into the not burn pile yet. But what I do is I take these 4 sigils and I combine them so the lines all touch. And yes, I definitely take liberties, and I look at something, and instead of trying to get it exactly, I'll just represent it in some way. So this is a mutation or morphing of these, which is a morphing or a mutation of these. And of course, as you can imagine, these now go into this pile, and I've got this one. And I want to take it one step further away from that route towards condensation, and finally I make it into this. So these go in the burn pile. This goes back into the bag. So what's going to happen is over the next week or 2 weeks or however long it takes, I'm going to be pulling these out, sigilizing them, and then putting a finished composite sigil into the bag. So I'll probably have 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 big sigils. At that point, I'll take 2 or 3 of them out, and I will make a composite, and then I'll throw them out. And then I'll put that one back in. Mind you, I'll want at that point to distinguish which order or which generation, because this is all about generations. You see that I'm taking all these sentences and I'm passing them through generations where they're eventually kind of condensing into a complex, layered ecology of desire. And yeah, so I put that back in. I'm going to burn this stuff. So, okay, charging sigils. There's lots of ways of charging sigils. Chaos magic is famous for masturbating, orgasming, and charging sigils while visualizing them doing that. Okay, so that's one way to charge a sigil. Sigils are charged by excitation, basically, or quietude. However, really it's just attention. If you can put attention into it, it is activated. So I'm a big fan of a book that, if it's here, I'll show it to you. It's a lovely little book called Advanced Magic for Beginners. Advanced Magic for Beginners, and I don't have it immediately available on my shelf, except, yeah, no, it's not right at my fingertips right now. But Advanced Magic for Beginners, still looking for it, is one of the best possible books on magic you can get and read, because it's got a phenomenally crystal clear statement of how it works, and it's written by a guy who has experimented with both traditional and chaos magics, and so it is neither chaos magic as we understand it, which is very postmodern and very relativistic, nor is it old school traditional. But his definition of magic is the art of experiencing truth, the science and art of experiencing truth. And his point is that basically what you do is you decide on a desire, you make sure that desire is realizable, then you decide on an action that is equivalent to that desire, and then you perform the action and experience the desire. And that's it. You yoke desired outcomes to realizable actions. That's magic. Of course, it's easier said than done. Often we don't follow through on the action, or for whatever reason. If we desire something but there's a blockage, it could be a super easy action, right? Like I'll be completely healed from all of my childhood trauma if I touch my nose. Wow, that was awesome. Did it give a lot of torque? Well, yeah, but the point is that you could get an action that's as simple as that, and you could actually not follow through on it because doubt can come in. And never underestimate just how much of a challenge can emerge from our own psyche. So the magician seems to be doing these simple actions to get these effects, but the magician is often working under psychological duress that is invisible to other people. And a lot of the resistance to our apparent ability to make anything manifest comes from deep forces that we often end up having to face within ourselves that are invisible to other people. That's actually what makes magicians kind of tough, is these inner struggles that we convert into magic. So it's not all simple recipe book stuff. If you have a desire and there is a significant gap between your current state and that gap has to be passed through. And if it's a really major gap, then initiating magic will take you there, but it'll take you there through the most direct possible route. So you have to be prepared for the emotional discharge, and you have to be prepared to follow through. So, assuming you have 5 or 6 different desires and you have condense them and pass them through these generations, and you have a nice little, we'll call it a grove, right? It's not quite a forest, but it's a grove. And let's say you've done this with 5 or 6, and finally you decide you're going to amalgamate them all. Do you have to get it exact and precise? No. Take the spirit, and then mix it together. Use the creativity. You're producing continuously more condensed versions of a complex of desires, and then forget about it. Then don't worry about it. It was fun. It was art. Maybe it'll work, and go on about your day. And really, it's just the exercise more than anything else of getting congruent. Congruent with what you desire, eliminating tangles and neutralizing counter desires and all that, and just practicing that. So even if it doesn't work, it's good practice. It's a joy. Magic is a joy regardless of whether it works or not. So do it, for joy. And yeah, so I'm going to say make a tiny little sigil forest. I tell you, there's some stuff you can do with this. You can make sigils out of this. This is so complex now. But if you wanted to derive a sigil that was less, shall we say, purpose-driven, but acts to reinforce this mesh, you could always just sort of look at this for a while and look at your forest for a while and get some shapes out of it and make another sigil out of it. So it can generate or iterate new forms and new motifs, and you can discover stuff. And it's not about the cognitive. It's not about the intentional or volitional. It's about just the experience of the weave of the energies. And if you, for example, find yourself in a situation, well, what if you make a statement of desire? What if you put a poison sigil in? What if you put a sigil in that is like contrary to your greater ecological, holistic good? So it's possible. It's possible maybe we're really angry, we make a sigil that isn't really the best thing for us to have done. We integrate it into a big mesh, and so we've got this thing. That can happen, and so that would be one of the things to think about. So there are what I'd say there's meta desires. Do you desire to, how do I say it? Let's say you project a sigil that projects a desire to hurt someone while you're in a moment of extreme anger, but you don't overall want to do that. So you can also make sigils that interact with sigils. So you can make a sigil, for example, that regulates. You can make the desire. I only desire the sigils that work to my highest benefit to be effective. So imagine that. You've got a sigil that then operates to regulate ill-conceived sigils. You create a sigil that says, all my most optimal and connected sigils are amplified. All my most counterproductive or self-defeating sigils are disabled. So these can be added into the mix if you want to. I sometimes will, it's like I said, the 3 wishes, right? What are the best 3 wishes? The first wish I would wish for is to know what the next 2 wishes, what the best next 2 wishes would be. So you can make a sigil to know, to have, I have skill at making sigils. I have skill at knowing what I desire. I have skill at phrasing my sigil desires. So those are sigil desires. Those are excellent sigils to make, because those will get you into the place where you can get the best sense of how to do it. So have fun. Make a little sigil forest. Use the momentum of the 20th path, the momentum of fire and spirit and magic that's burgeoning right now, and seed it with your most connected, most optimal, most uplifting, and most helpful desires, and make a little forest.